This is an interview with Mr. Dan Fortner, Fortner, at 2901 West Farm Road 102, Springfield, Missouri, 65803. It's 16 May 2007. Tommy Pike is doing the interviewing. Jerry Benner is doing the engineering. Both are members of the Route 66 Association of Missouri.
Dan, I want to thank you for taking time to visit with us this morning and everything. When did you grew up here in the Springfield area and all, and have lived here most of your life, and you owned the A&W root beer stands here in Springfield for a number of years and all. You wanted to tell us a little bit about kind of how you got your start and everything in business.
Well, I started working for Western Electric, and in 1959 my kids were getting old enough to go to school, and I was having to travel a lot with them, and decided I needed to get into something that I could stay at home a little more. So I started looking at an A&W in St. Charles, Missouri, and I got to know that operator and decided that might be a good possibility. I had worked a lot of years in Rolla, a lot of time, and that's where my first A&W was in Rolla. And then had an opportunity to sell out there in the second year at a good profit and be able to come up with some capital. And I actually had a partner here in Springfield, Ken Farrell, was a partner of mine, and he had also worked for Western Electric, and he had started an A&W in West Plains. Both of us came to Springfield and started the chain here, and that's how I got into the A&W business.
Where was your first A&W store here in Springfield?
Here in Springfield at 1717 East Cherokee, across from Aunt Martha's Pancake House.
Okay.
And then, well, actually, the first store here was on West Sunshine. Another operator had bought it out or had started it, and he was dissatisfied with the operation, and so we bought him out and started from there. After the 1952 ruling by the schools had to integrate, some guys from Kansas City owned the franchise here in Springfield, and they thought the restaurant business was just going to go to pot when they integrated the restaurants. And so Chestnut Street Trafficway went through and took that old A&W that was there on Boonville. It took it out, and they didn't want to rebuild, and that's how we got the franchise. We weren't afraid of that possibility of the integration thing being a problem, and so we bought the franchise for $2,500 for the whole city of Springfield, and that's how we got started.
Well, then you had the A&W root beer stand there on West Kearney Street, which was Route 66.
We had one on St. Louis Street, which was right downtown, which was on the city route, and we had one on Kearney Street, which was on the other route.
Yeah, the one downtown was just about a half a block out of the square to the east, wasn't it?
Just almost, well, next door to Mark's clothing store.
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten about that, but there was a A&W root beer store there. So you, at one time, had 4 or 5?
4 here in Springfield. We had the one on Kearney Street, by the way, was the #1 in volume root beer store in the United States. the north side of Springfield has always been, I don't know why people have feared the business over here, but many times that I understand that Walmart up on the corner, it used to be before they built the new supercenter, when they built that store, that was the #1 store for a few quarters. Of course, it finally got caught up with. We had the #1 store in volume for a number of years in the A&W root beer chain, but business on 66 was terrific at that time because you can imagine the amount of traffic going down Kearney Street.
Well, that was the early 60s. That was prior to the interstate being
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And, well, even after the interstate went through, the people would get off of I-44 and 13, and if they wanted to eat, there were no eating establishments till you came into Kearney Street. And A&W was, well, it predated McDonald's and everything there. That
Yes.
was the #1 eat place there on West Kearney. There were a few restaurants up and down that section, but there weren't even too many of those.
No, at the time that we built that one on Kearney Street, between Grant and Kansas, which wasn't even through there at that time, there was five, excuse me. I think I counted them recently. There's 27 through that area now. Yes.
Good. Yeah, I remember there at Melville Road was the Puff Pig,
Yeah.
and then on the other side of the street was a Twin Twirl,
Twin Kiss.
Twin Kiss,
Yeah.
little drive-in, kind of like a Dairy Queen.
Yeah. And Boggs Cafe. And there's
Yeah.
another cafe on the other side of the street about where the fish place is now. And one more. That's about it. That was it.
So even the interstate travelers, if they wanted to eat, they had to come around onto Kearney Street there and find something to eat.
There were a number of us. We were afraid that taking Route 66 off of Kearney Street would really hurt us. And there were a number of us got together. We formed what was called the Kearney Street Development Association. It ended up being North Springfield Betterment Association, which is still in existence. But we got the idea to recreate the old highway. Now this was late 1960s or mid 1960s, going back with the old type gas pumps, the visual gas pumps, and trying to redo the thing at that time to attract traffic down the, we never did get anywhere with it, but in fact I was thinking this morning, Fred Verge that had fantastic caverns, and Wade Williams, Guy Peck, all those guys up and down the street that had businesses, every one of them are dead now. It's, time gets to you sooner or later.
Well, Wade Williams, though, his son still owns
Still owns that property there on Kearney, yeah.
Grant and Kearney, and still has a garage and all there at that location. The atmosphere and all of Kearney streets changed tremendous. Well, even up till maybe 10, 15 years ago, and there wasn't as many businesses as there are there now. And then on Kansas, between Kearney Street and the interstate, that's just
It was
one
nothing.
right after the other one now. Yeah. Traffic is tremendous in there. So it's all changed a long ways from when the motel was there on the corner, kind of what's Kansas now, and Johnny Weatherwax owned the motel there, and did he own the Puff Pig restaurant too. Well, that was, I know that through the 50s, the Puff Pig was a place to eat there
yeah.
on Kearney Street.
Yes.
You couldn't hardly get a place in there to eat. It was always busy.
Yep.
Of course, that was the heyday of Route 66, and a lot of travelers and all up and down through there, so that was a busy business then. And everything. And you got out of the root beer, or out of the A&W when?
In '74. I sold out to my partner, and he continued. The A&W chain the chain parent company went downhill. That was an interesting story, how their headquarters were in Santa Monica, California. One guy owned the A&W Root Beer Company, and they didn't really have franchise fees the way they are now, and percentage of sales and so on. They just charged you so much, and you had to buy root beer from them, and that was it. And so he sold out. There was a J. Hungerford Smith Company, made the root beer, and he sold out to them for $4 million. And United Fruit Company, and a few years later, they bought out J. Hungerford Smith, thinking they had bought all these. They thought the company owned all the stores. Well, they were all independently owned, and they had given way too much for it. But then United Brands bought out United Fruit Company for $40 million, and the thing just kept getting bigger. Well, United Brands put an ad in Reader's Digest. They again thought they had bought all these outlets, and they put an ad in Reader's Digest, good for one A&W root beer compliments of United Brands. And well, a lot of the operators were really aggravated because of that, them giving away their root beer. I was tickled to death because that was a good promotion that I couldn't have afforded on my own. But anyway, as a joke, I was kind of the head of a operators association, and so I had Harry Lightfoot, you probably know Harry, an advertising man, put together a coupon that said good for one Chiquita brand banana, compliments of your local A&W operator anywhere in the United States. Well, I sent these things to Boston, told them that I'd had 1 million of these printed. Man, I had lawyers from Boston and all over the country down here threatening me, and I had to produce affidavits that there was only so many of these printed, and it was a joke, and I really got myself in a trap over that one.
A promotion that backfired.
A promotion that backfired.
But I imagine that over the period of time you owned it, that the root beer business changed quite a bit to what it was well back, like when I remember the root beer stand there across from City Hall, there where Chestnut Street goes through now, and it was all walk up. I mean, everybody just, I don't remember if they had car hops there.
They hopped some cars up and down Boonville Street. Yeah.
Did they? Well, I remember you'd walk up, I mean, the counter was right almost out on, well, the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And you walked up there and ordered what you wanted and everything. And that changed quite a bit. Now, like there on Kearney, you didn't have walk-up business there, did you?
We had walk-up business, but and we eventually put in a dining room there. But the main part, we had just 2 little areas on each side of the business with tables that people could walk up and get something, but most of it was car hop business in cars. My first year that I was in operation, the second year that I was in business at Rolla, I went to a dime on root beer, but root beer was a nickel. And it takes a lot of nickels to go any place. So I had put every penny that I could borrow, beg, and steal in that stand at Rolla, and it was really good. It was really had taken off good, and so my wife had come home for a weekend, and my dad was there, and I said, let's go out and have a steak. And we went out to a restaurant there in Rolla to have a steak and ordered the biggest steak on the menu, which was $6 and something. While it was coming, I got to thinking about how many nickel root beers it took to pay for that steak, and got sick and couldn't eat it. But I started at a nickel. Of course, now you go almost any place, any drink's $1 or more. That's a
Or
big change.
$1.65.
Yeah, after that.
Why did you quit? You said 72?
I was tired for one thing. I had fought it pretty hard all the years that I'd been in business, and I'd had some health problems. I had ulcers, but I also saw the handwriting on the wall of so many chains coming in. Burger King was coming in, and all of them, no matter how good or bad they were going to take a piece of the business. And A&W had some problems in that they didn't have control, quality control, the way a lot of the new chains did. And I could see that was going to be a problem because a lot of the new chains, they were really doing a good job with quality control, and the quality of their places was good. So I just thought it was opportunity time for me to get out of it. And after 15 years. And
So you always sold food as well as root beer?
yes, to begin with, it was a very limited menu. I can't believe Sonic today, they come out with a new item every week. Back at that time, you come out with a fairly limited and good menu, and you stuck with it. I believe we had an idea within the A&W chain of Burger Family. I don't know whether you remember that or not. Papa,
the
Mama,
little-
Baby, and
yeah.
Teen Burger. And it was a good promotion. But we had basically burgers, hot dogs, conies. We had a fish sandwich, French fries. That was pretty well it. Pork tenderloin, we called a Hamas Alabamas. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
But you probably don't realize that was a stolen idea. Al Cap and the pig, that was from the original chain of Hamas Alabamas, that pig. But I thought that was a good name for pork tenderloin, but that was the limit of our menu, and we nowadays people's ideas on diet are changing so much, and a lot of people are trying to get low-fat foods and so on. It's really changed. You got to have a huge menu anymore.
Well, that's how McDonald's started. Just
Yeah,
hamburgers, cheeseburgers, and drinks and
That's
fries.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, when you sold out in, 74,
Mm-hmm.
there was a McDonald's there next to you, to
Yes.
the west, that wasn't there when you started there.
Actually, that McDonald's came in the second year after we did. And surprisingly enough, we ended up later on purposely building an A&W close to McDonald's, because nobody goes to the same place all the time. I'll guarantee you go to McDonald's or you go to A&W 10 times in a row, you'll want to go someplace else for a while. And we had no problem at all. We had a good quality product and a good pricing product, and we had no trouble at all competing with McDonald's. But when you get 8 or 10 of those in an area, everybody takes a piece of the pie. And
Now, you also had the corn dog.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, we didn't serve that at the root beer stand.
you didn't serve that there.
No. we did at the fair.
You did that after you went to fair, and I believe you told me you went up to Cozy Dog in Springfield, Illinois, and got the batter and everything from them.
Right.
So you sold the corn dog at your fair concession.
Right. Yeah, we got that guy, well, with that Cozy Dog, he's been around forever too. And he had what we thought was the best product for a corn dog, and that's, yeah, we still go up there and get a load when we need it.
Mm-hmm. I remember at the A&W's on Tuesday you had what? That was Coney Day,
15-cent conies. That A&W on Kearney Street, we sold 1,000 dozen conies. No, 300 dozen conies on Coney Day. 1,000 dozen in the whole town, in all of our places. But the idea with that was, you know, people don't just come and eat conies. We didn't make any money on the conies, but the French fries, the amount of French fries, the amount of root beers went way up, and it was a really good promotion. A lot of the A&Ws around the country adopted that promotion.
Well, you always had the root beer, which was one of the real draws, yeah.
Yep.
And the frozen mugs.
Yep.
Now, you said that one company made their root beer, and I mean, it came what, like in a gallon jug or something, and...
The root beer came, actually, a gallon of A&W root beer concentrate made 50-gallon root beer. And the standard way we mixed was what we called a batch, which was 150 gallon, took 3 gallons of concentrate, and 120 pounds sugar, 37.5 gallons of water, and that made the ready-to-use syrup, and then that ended up being 150 gallon root beer.
And then, did you have one of those barrels that you put it in and the ice up there and you...
No, we had, it was a stainless steel, had coils in it, and pumped the root beer from a cooler back in the back, a walk-in cooler, and tanks back there into this coil. The ideal temperature to serve root beer is about 36 degrees, same way with beer, regular beer. But if you get it too cold, why, that's why it was never iced. It'll get it too cold and it affects your taste buds. And the ideal temperature is from 36, 38 degrees to serve it.
Why I ask about that, first job, official job, like where I paid taxes and Social Security and all, was I was 15 years old and I worked for Faye's root beer stand there at Delaware and Kearney Street.
Yep.
And she had a recipe and she mixed her own root beer syrup and had a big old stainless steel pot, and they'd pour so many bags of sugar and all, and then boil the water on the stove and dump it in there, and you had to stir it and everything. And that'd been quite a job done for some place that sold a lot of it. And then you had to put it up, and they had the barrel, and you had to pour the concentrate or whatever up in it, and then ice it and everything, and then it had a spigot on it. And
it was basically the same thing. It just didn't do quite the volume you could do through the other system. Yeah. But we would sell, on a good day, we would sell 200, 250 gallon of root beer there. And we sold a lot of takeout root beer at that. Now, anymore, you couldn't get by with what we did. People bring their own jugs in, and we'd take their jug and put our jug back out. We bought every Coke jug we could get a hold of and from all the drugstores and rinsed them out and tried to sterilize them. I wonder how good a job we did. Anyway, we sold lots of takeout root beer.
Yeah, now then they would the health department would have a heart attack and die on the spot if you did that.
Absolutely, yep.
It's altogether a different deal. And a lot of these places, you was talking about the quality. Back then, you basically put everything together. I mean, the hot dogs, the conies, and everything. Now then, I think, like these chains, they come in a refrigerator truck and...
Yeah, there's a lot of pre-prepared stuff. You know, a lot of things in the health thing. Now you've got to wear plastic disposable gloves. Well, in many cases, those disposable gloves are less sanitary than when you're handling stuff with your hands. Every once in a while, you know your hands are dirty and you go wash them. But with those disposable gloves, well, you just keep using them and they never get washed. And sometimes they're less sanitary than the bare hands are. But I don't know. The health thing, it's necessary. You've got to have health department laws, but people just have to have a conscience about wanting to be healthy, because they can be unsanitary in a minute if they want to, no matter how many health departments come in.
That's probably true, and it's a lot of the stuff almost gets fanatical about the way they do some of the rules and all. But then you were involved with concessions and the fair.
We put our first root beer stands in the fair in 1961, and were there for 46 years, and did a lot of that. Was a big. I continued to own those. My son and I, those two root beer stands at the fairground.
You still own them now?
No, we sold out
You sold that
food operations a year ago.
Yeah. I didn't know if you still had just the root beer stands there, or and all. And then you've got the pineapple whip.
Still have those. One of my sons, I have two sons, and they, you know, after I sold out the NWs, I became the manager of the fairgrounds for a number of years also. And that would have been a conflict of interest. I was the concessions operator. The fairgrounds got in bad financial condition. They asked me to take it over, and I said, I can't give up these root beer stands and take over the management of the fair. So they said, fine. So I turned those over to my sons, and I managed the fair for 12 years, and I retired from that, and they continued. But one of them got cancer and had a lot of physical problems, so 2 years will be, well, a year ago this past fall, we sold out to the fairground.
Do you still do catering and such?
No.
You don't do
Just
that?
a pineapple whip.
Just a pineapple whip.
They're getting them out this week.
What is that? You all know what it is, but I
it's
don't.
Well, you've got how many of those little three of the trailers, mm-hmm. and they are around, like one's out on Battlefield, and one, where do you put the other?
Republic Road and Fremont, and one up here on Kearney Street.
Yeah, and they're...
it's a frozen ice cream-like product, very, very good. We came up with the recipe on that, and we make the product, and very successful. It does a lot of business around town in the summertime. But they're able to handle those all right.
It's a cone with, like, looks like a Dairy Queen, I mean, on it, but it's pineapple. And then you had the grape. Do you still have
Still have that.
the grape flavored one too? And they're
pineapple sells 5-6 to 1, but a lot of people don't like pineapple, so we put the grape in for them.
You know, they're really they're a treat, and then you had them at the fair for years and years and years. So but for years the fair was the only place you could get them till you put the stands out around. So that
it's called creating a demand for something, making it special.
well, there's a lot of people, like my dad. He went to fair, but he had to have the pineapple whip when he was out there, and you only got it once a year. If you didn't go to the fair, you didn't have the opportunity. So there was a vast market for that in the area then when they started selling them around in town. And every once in a while during the summer, I'll have to stop and get one. Also, it's
I've got to have at least one a week to survive, but it's usually 2 or 3.
Well, it shows it must be good for you. So
the A&W stand there on Kearney Street, you say, was the #1 volume in the country then for a while. Because I imagine no small help because it was on Route 66 and all that.
No doubt about it. A&W was a very strong in Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, strong all over the country, but not as strong on the East Coast as it was on the West Coast and up to the Midwest. But lots of people were just looking for you when they came through town, looking for an A&W. And no doubt about it, Kearney Street made a big difference. I don't know how in the world, I mentioned earlier that we were afraid we were going to lose so much business, but there were a lot of people stayed off of Kearney Street because the traffic was so bad, and it became a local street, and it didn't lose the business that we thought it was. But there was a hill to the east there when you came over, and I've seen cars, I thought for sure it'd be run over by a tandem coming over that hill and waiting to get into the driveway, but I don't think there ever was a rear ender there, but there was tremendous. Can you imagine going out there now and looking at I-44 and thinking what that traffic would look like if it was on Kearney Street today?
Well, it'd be bumper to bumper for blocks and blocks and blocks.
Well, it'd just be completely stopped, I think. I just don't think it could move.
did you do any advertising on the road, or?
We had billboards on the highway, yeah. And our big advertising deal, my partner and I both carried a pocket full of free root beer cards in our pocket. Anytime we see anybody, hey, have a free root beer on us. There was a little secret to that. You don't usually come in by yourself. You got one free root beer, you buy one. Well, that gets you even to begin with, and then if you get them for a customer, why, they're good from then on.
Well, it seemed there was always something special about getting a root beer. You get a Coke anywhere, but I remember as a kid going to A&W and getting a mug, and you'd sit in the car and drink it. And
to this day,
you couldn't get root beer like that at home.
I have to have a root beer float every once in a while. That's the best. Tommy, you may remember a story I told at a Route 66 meeting about a lady in the restroom. Do you remember that?
I remember.
Would that work here?
Yeah, that'd work.
We had a little sewer problem at that drive-in on Kearney Street. About once a month or once every 2 or 3 months, something would stop the sewer up, and we could tell it was a problem because the floor drain would begin to gurgle, and so we learned we could just run out to the men's restroom and open and take the stool up, take a bottle of CO2 gas, which had 2,000 pounds of pressure in it, stick a hose down in it, pack paper towel around it, and turn the pressure on and blow it out and put the stool back in, and that was all there was to it. One day at noon, this thing began to gurgle, and so we got the tank, took the stool out, opened the valve, and this thing made an awful roar. Well, instead of it blowing the line out, it blew up in the women's restroom, and there was a woman sitting on the stool. we heard the scream, begin to scream, and she had a little kid with her. Both of them ran out in the dining room. She had her pants down around her knees, screaming. She had the syrup all over her. And the funny thing about it, the lady had a sense of humor. She hadn't, or she'd have sued us for everything we got. But she had been in a tornado a week or two before, and she said that sounded exactly the way that tornado did. And when that stuff, she went up to Wade Williams' filling station and cleaned up, but Wade kidded me from that for the rest of his life because that was the worst deal that I ever got into.
I guess she got a free root beer card.
She got all the food the whole family wanted, yes, sir.
Today you'd be in a lawsuit like you wouldn't believe.
Yes, yeah. Boy, we didn't dream that was going to come back out the other way.
Oh, a lot of things happen that is just almost beyond belief,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yes.
Well, you employed a lot of school kids that worked there, and
We had a lot of Hillcrest kids at Kearney Street, and we had a lot of Baptist Bible College students there. Back at that time, a lot more college students worked than they do today. And we would take them home to make sure they got home safely at night. But there's a funny story about, there's a guy here in town, I won't mention his name, but he's still a builder here, a builder of fine homes. But his brother worked for us at the root beer stand. He made 50 cents an hour. And he worked across the street at there in the shopping center at the drugstore. There was a drugstore in Hillcrest Shopping Center, and they paid 75 cents an hour. And that was the best job on the north side because about 50 cents an hour was what most of the other jobs paid. Well, he had worked there about a year, and he went in to the drugstore one day. He thought he needed a raise, and he told Mr. Gordon that he had worked for a year, and he thought he'd done a good job and would like to talk to him about a raise. And Mr. Gordon looked at him and said, "Son, we don't give raises, we get new boys, you're fired." And he had to come across the street and work for 50 cents an hour. Things have changed a little over the years.
Yeah. Don't give raises.
No, we don't give raises, we get new boys.
Yeah, that Hillcrest Shopping Center was, there was a consumer's grocery store there, and I mean, that was a pretty thriving place.
It was. It was all busy, bowling alley, and yeah, that Dyer shoe store there, drugstore, dime store, there was a...
Yeah. It's funny how things come and go and everything. I mean, you know, the traffic patterns change and all, and now then there's no Riley store where Consumers was and all. It just seems to change and everything. I have been noticing, like at the fairgrounds and everything, they used to, the fair and maybe one or two things during the year, and then when you managed it, they began to get more events in there, and now then there's nearly something there all the time, seems like, when you go by. And I guess that's just the way it is. There's a lot more things to do, or they hold a lot more things than they used to, maybe, but I know, well, they had Doling Park there, and it was a big draw for several years, and now then it's just a senior citizens center and a park. don't even have much of a ball diamond there anymore.
No, I don't know whether they even play there anymore or not.
I saw, looked like a family out there playing catch. Here a while back, we went out there to there was something at the senior citizens deal, and there was, like I say, looked like a family out there where the diamond used to be playing.
You knew there used to be a streetcar line out there.
Yeah.
Went out Broadway
Right.
and went down there and back in on Talmadge and back in. In fact, I have a 1899 city ordinance downstairs. You know, I collect Springfield stuff.
Yeah, I know that.
And this ordinance, there were 6 different franchises for streetcar tracks or streetcar lines in Springfield at that time. One that ran up and down Commercial Street, one ran from Commercial Street to the fair, one that ran out there to the Doling Park, but they ended up being Springfield Traction Company, all one company, but at that time there were 6 different companies.
I remember my dad telling about, and in fact, a lot of the streetcars had brick in the center of the tracks. Mm-hmm. The tracks was still in the street when I was a kid, and there at Turner and National, there was a lane of bricks that went around that corner in a kind of a curve, and Turner Street is paved in 3 sections, and my dad said that center section used to be the streetcar tracks, and it went down, and there behind BBC, where it went up that hill, that one run up there and went to the track on Broadway. And that streetcar would come there and go around off of National onto Boulevard, and then it would go up the hill, and he said when it went up the hill that it was like a cog railroad. It had a set of gears in the center, and there's a wheel that'd get on it and
Well, there used to
pull
be
it
a
up.
hill there at Dale that the kids, I lived in town a couple of years. I was raised out there by Crystal Cave, but I lived over on Ramsey a couple of years, and we'd go down there and soap those tracks. So that the streetcar, he'd carried a bucket of water in there because he ran onto that all the time in a mop, but he'd come around that corner and hit that soap, and he'd just sit there and spin those wheels on that streetcar. Kids also used to run and pull the trolley that went up. It had a rope, and so that they could put it back on. They'd jump the line every once in a while, but kids would run by that thing and jerk it off the trolley. He'd have to get it back on. I guess kids have been ornery forever.
They just didn't get arrested back then.
They didn't get arrested. Yep.
It was, well, they didn't have all these computer games and everything. Had to find their own entertainment, I guess.
Yep.
But you was talking about collecting Springfield stuff. I was reading in a book that, well, it was Skip Curtis's book, and he states in there that once upon a time that Route 66 there at Glenstone went down Commercial Street to Boonville and into the square. And I haven't, the only time I can figure out that this might have been done was when they put the viaduct in there over the railroad tracks just before you got to St. Louis Street, and it was actually a detour was what it was, more than an actual routing of the road.
I would guess that was true because I didn't remember that, but as you say, they had to do something when they built that overpass, and but I didn't remember it going in that way at all.
I didn't remember it, but he stated that for a time that it went that way, and I got to thinking, Commercial Street was probably the straightest shot in and into Boonville, and that took you right into the square. at that time. And of course, there wasn't Chestnut. That was many years before Chestnut Street Expressway and all, and probably the only other street that was really a straight shot in would have been Division Street. So that's the only reason I could figure that it was ever, and it was actually a detour for while that was. And the way I understand it, those railroad tracks there, that viaduct there goes over, that there were a lot of accidents there. People would run into the trains there. And there was a gas station. Well, in fact, the building's still there. At Irene's Quick Spuds used to be there.
Yeah.
That was actually a gas station for years and years, and it was on street level, and now it's kind of under the overpass.
Yep.
And all. But yeah, there's a lot of history in Springfield. Used to be a pretty good transportation center with the railroad and the Camel 66, and well, there were several trucking companies around here, and then Ozark Airlines.
It was a real mistake, I think, to ever let the passenger train service go to pot in this country. We're gonna come to a point where we're gonna need that, and it's gone. And yeah, Powell Brothers Truck Line used to be a big truck line here.
Yeah, now they were down there on High and Bolivar Road.
Well, yep. I have a lot of advertising from Powell Brothers and Camel 66. Yep.
You've got an extensive A&W collection too.
Most of it is at my son's. Yeah, we have probably, oh gosh, 2,000-3,000 pieces of it, but, and I have I've sold my Springfield collection. It's still downstairs, but I have sold it.
You have?
Yeah.
Locally or?
Yeah. To John Ryan. You know
Oh,
John?
yeah, I know John.
John Ryan bought it.
I'll be. Well, I wished I'd known it was for sale. My collection might have been bigger. A lot bigger.
We'll go down and look at it after a while. Okay. It's still downstairs.
Stairs?
He's paying on
it. So you got rid of all your Springfield collection?
Every piece of it.
Well, the A&W, you had quite a bit of A&W stuff there at the fairgrounds when they had that explosion out there, but
the biggest part of that did not belong to us. It belonged to, and I can't tell you his name, the guy that used to have the Frisco Museum.
Oh, Alan Smith.
Alan Smith. Alan had, we probably might have had 50 pieces in there, but most of that was his.
Oh.
Yeah, we didn't lose very much of that in that. I did lose a Springfield wagon and.
Oh, the wagon was yours.
Yeah, and the old, there was a water trough there, big, that came out of the city lot. Tommy Purcell gave that to us, and that was lost.
What happened?
An explosion in one of the buildings there that just disintegrated the whole building. And they wouldn't let the insurance company wouldn't let anybody go in to try to salvage anything out of it.
What caused the explosion?
A gas leak.
Wow.
Killed a fellow.
It was just, what, about 2 weeks before the fair? Or?
It was a little bit longer than that, but it was, he went in, it had a basement. It was a building that was built by the WPA. And the basement had no windows in it at all, just had, and apparently, well, not apparently, they proved it, that there was a hole came in a gas line about 25 feet from the building, but it followed the sewer line up into the building and built up a gas in there. And he either flipped the switch on and there was an arc from it or a cigarette lighter or something, but it just disintegrated that building. We were sitting here at the table and it was just a shock. We thought, holy mackerel, something, and all the way from the fairground.
What year was that?
It would have been
2003.
2002 or 3, right
Yeah.
in there. I'm not sure, but
I was home when it happened, and I mean, it was. I was outside, and you knew something happened. You just didn't know what, and that building it just blew it completely away.
it was built by the WPA. That basement was solid concrete. The walls were 12 inches thick. Above, the top floor was all stone, and it did. My kids were down standing outside another building at the other end of the fairground. They said they could see that stuff. They heard the explosion and could see that stuff go into the air. Knew something terrible had happened, but it really took the fire out of the fair for a while.
Yeah, it was piled around. Well, there was some stuff there people was putting in for display for the fair, and I mean, it was, one guy lost several antique bicycles and all in it. I mean, it went up. I'm sure if the insurance company had let them, some of the stuff could have been salvaged.
Yeah, I know that water trough from the city market could have been, because it's solid concrete, but they wouldn't let them do it.
It's too bad. They just hauled it all to the dump, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Every bit of it. And everything.
We can wind up.
Well, okay. Well, Dan, I want to thank you for taking your time today to visit with us and tell us about the A&W root beer business here in Springfield and Rolla and the area. By chance, was you on Route 66 in Rolla?
Yes. I didn't realize what a privilege that was at the time, because, well, you're just on Route 66, but since it's become such a historical highway, to have had 2 businesses on Route, actually 3 with that downtown, might almost be a record.
Yeah,
it was some highway. I have seen lots of funny things. People going through, and everything in the world went down Route 66. It was certainly the mother road.
Well, like I say, I want to thank you for your time and all today. We sure appreciate it.
You're welcome.